In America is the office of the president is much more important than the occupant. That's what provides stability for our country. And I felt it would weaken the presidency, not me, weaken the presidency to engage in all this name calling. And
I didn't want you to do that.
Comfortable with that decision.
I wanted you to do what you did in your book while you were sitting in the White House, in the sense that you explained exactly why you did what you did, so that the American people wouldn't buy the propaganda that your enemies were throwing out.
Well, in all due respect, I spent a lot of time explaining. The problem is that sometimes the explanations required more than 30 seconds. And oftentimes the president only is given 30 seconds on a national TV broadcast. And no, I spent a lot of time with the media. I harbor no resentment to the media, by the way.
Really? Even the people who tried to hurt you and called you a criminal?
No, I don't like to be called a criminal. But I think a lot of times the media were just transmitting other voices. And
no, they believe me.
Okay, well.
They didn't like you. And that was my next question. Again, I don't know you very well, but you're affable, and people around your staff, like Dana Perino works for us now. She thinks you're the greatest. She loves you, okay?
Kind of.
But the people in the press hated you, a lot of them. Why? Why?
I don't know. You have to ask them. I'm not a hater. And so sometimes it's hard for me to understand why somebody hates somebody. And could have been because of my policies. Maybe they didn't like my religion. I don't know. I'm sure there's a myriad of reasons. But that's what happens when you're the president. And it can either bother you or not bother you. I chose.
You ever think about it?
Being hated? No, not really.
Never?
No. Pretty comfortable guy right now, you know.
No, you look it.
I really am. I'm honored to have served, and I'm glad I served, and I gave it my all, and that's all you can do in life. And I got back, and this sounds corny to some, I understand, but when I looked in the mirror, I knew I didn't sell my soul for the sake of any short-term politics or popularity, and I think that's important.
When President Bush left office, his approval rating was 34%, according to Gallup. When we come right back, I will ask the president whether there is tension between him and Dick Cheney. He deals with that a bit in the book. The conversation continues in just a few moments. President Bush deals with a lot of personalities in his book, Decision Points, among them Vice President Dick Cheney, who had a disagreement with the president over his refusal to pardon Cheney's right-hand man, Scooter Libby.
One of the interesting parts about the book, Dick Cheney was mad at you because you didn't pardon Scooter Libby. Is he still mad at you?
No, he's not. I don't think so.
Do you talk to him a lot?
Fair amount, I do. Yeah, I was very concerned about him because he was sick, and then I'm pleased to report he's coming down to the groundbreaking of our library at SMU.
So you guys are pals still?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Going to have lunch with him and looking forward to seeing him.
He was a powerful vice president, correct?
Well, I'm not sure how you compare him to other vice presidents, but
you listened to him, right?
Of course I did. Just like I listened to a lot of other advisors, and the book makes it clear sometimes he agreed with my decisions, and sometimes he didn't agree with my decisions, but always. He helped implement the decisions, and never did he go behind my back. And
he was straight up.
Well, I make it clear to the reader, this is important, that I made the right choice in picking him in 2000, and I feel the same way as I sit and talk to you.
Press probably hated him more than they hated you, and he, unlike you, pushed back a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you ever discuss the press between you?
Occasionally, you know. You might remember the famous moment in Naperville, Illinois, when the mic was on, and I was referring to some press guy, and so occasionally there was grousing. But generally, I was aware of what was in the press. I generally ignored the opinion because by the time I ended, it was very predictable.
Even mine? Did you ignore?
Oh, of course, I listened to yours all the time, and became the whole crux of the Bush administration.
Your father. How often did you call him when you were in the White House for advice?
Yeah. not very often for advice, but I talked to him often to try to comfort him.
Why didn't you seek his advice? I mean, former president.
Well, because he knew that I had better information at the time than he would have known, and he understood what it meant to be president. I mean, the president gets a lot of advice, some of it unsolicited, a lot of it from inside the White House, but he also knew that when the heat gets on, and the heat was on during my administration, you tend to seek out the advice of the people closest to you. And what's interesting about my relationship, and I make this clear in the book, with my dad, one is based upon love. I mean, I love the guy. And secondly, and I admire him, by the way. And secondly, I knew what it was like to be the loved one of a president. I mean, '92 was a painful year. I didn't like the way the press talked about my dad. I did
put feistier back
I
then.
punched back, and I'd get in people's face.
I hate guys like that.
Yeah, you were wishing that would be later, but anyway. And so my dad, and I knew my dad would be agonizing over what he read or what he heard.
You, right.
And so I'd call him and say, I'm doing great. Just like when I'd call him when he was president, he'd say, I'm doing good, son, don't worry about me.
No.
And so our roles got reversed. I spent most of my time comforting my dad.
Interesting. Colin Powell didn't want to invade Iraq.
Another O'Reilly provocative statement. Nobody wanted to use the military except...
But he advised you not to do it, didn't he?
The conversation that I replayed in the book basically was a reluctance to use the troops in Iraq.
Right.
However, when I said if we have to, in other words, if diplomacy runs its course and we have to use troops, he said, I'll support you.
But he didn't want to.
Well, you can understand that. He's the
I
general.
absolutely understand it. Look what happened. I mean, the unintended consequences of that invasion were tremendous. They were horrific.
Well, the intended consequences were also tremendous.
You realize.
And that is that 25 million people were liberated.
True.
A country that had been run by a tyrant was no longer a threat to the United States of America. And we have a chance to have a transformative moment in the Middle East, and that is a free society emerging.
But you know the blood and treasure sacrifice that the American public, and not to mention the military, we're here in this great Air Force Museum, not to mention the killed in Maine.
No question. No question.
So it's always a balancing act. Is it worth it for that?
No.
Could we have done it another way? Condoleezza Rice told me, she's in a very good book out, by the way.
I read it.
And I was interviewing her.
But you're only promoting one book, and that's mine. No,
your book, listen, you're going to be #1, and the worst part about that is you're knocking me down on the bestseller list. Okay, but you're opening
has written a great book.
And she told me that maybe we should have done another way. In hindsight, maybe we could have gotten him out of there in another way.
No, I think if people read the book, they'll realize we went to we
that was the only way.
Every way, everything possible.
Were you scared when you ordered the surge and it was like you against the world? I mean, tell
I don't think scared is the right.
Apprehensive?
Right. No, I was convinced that that if we didn't put more troops in,
but you were
we
alone.
would lose. And if we lost, the consequences would be catastrophic.
One of the moments that when I interviewed then Senator Obama, he admitted to me that he was wrong and you were right in that surge thing. And that was painful for him to admit because, as you know, he was a vociferous critic against the Iraq War. Do you ever speak to President Obama? Does he seek your counsel on anything?
No. He did call me and ask me to join with President Clinton to help raise money for the people down there in Haiti, and I was more than happy to participate.
So that was the last call?
Well, no, he called me right before his speech. He gave a military speech on Iraq, and he was heading into Texas and gave me a heads up that what he was going to say in the speech, and I was grateful for that. But I don't expect to be called by President Obama, nor do I expect to be called by whoever follows President Obama.
Well, if I'm elected, I'm going to call you. Is that all right?
If you're elected, I'll be in total shock. So
you won't be able to speak. You won't be the only one. All right. Now, were you surprised John McCain lost?
I was disappointed he lost. And
you think any of it was your fault?
I think the fact, first of all, if you're the head of the party and your popularity isn't good, it makes a drag for Senator McCain. He had a generational issue he had to deal with. I mean, he had a young president that nobody hardly knew, and an older guy, and I think generational politics affected my dad's campaign, for example, in '92.
Yeah, against Clinton. Sure. Sarah Palin, his VP choice, a very controversial woman. You thought it was a good choice?
Yeah, I think it energized the party. I mean, there was a moment where people were kind of in the doldrums, and Sarah Palin arrived, and boom.
Going forward, 212.
Probably won't answer this question.
You won't answer the 212 question?
No.
You don't want to?
Be a
Looking ahead
pundit?
to the Republican Party's resurgence?
You want me to be a pundit?
That'd be great. You want to be on like once a week on the
That's what I'm
factor?
trying to tell you. No, I don't.
Well,
It looks like my main candidate is not going to run, and that's my brother Jeb.
That's interesting.
So that's a dodge to the
No,
question.
no, that was a good. That's good.
Okay.
All right. So you'd like, but 212 Republicans